bakers. I'm gonna give it a second to let everyone get on. In case you didn't know, it is Runners Up Week, and it is a week for everything that came in second in all of the polls. Each week there is a poll to vote for what we make, and you know, I have gotten some pretty serious accusations that I rigged this week to make savory scones because I've been talking about them every time we have a savory session. And I just want you to know that it is 100% true that I did rig this week, but it is only because out of 4 options, 3 tied, and I didn't know what to do with that. And so we're doing them all. We're actually going to do all of them. I did select the order, and so we're starting with savory scones, but yes, for anyone that accused me of rigging this week, I did rig this week. But next week, though I will be out of town catering a wedding and attending that wedding, we are doing chocolate peanut butter cupcakes. The following week, I'll be live again. We're doing citrus meringue pie. We're doing Runners Up Week 3 weeks in a row. And then poor Madeline's. I think they were 1 vote behind, don't get me wrong, but maybe sometime we'll do Madeline's. The thing about Madeline's is I would suggest you have a Madeline pan or else it doesn't crisp the same way. So I get that. Like I totally get that. So yeah, I rigged the week. Yes, we're doing savory scones. And yes, we're doing all of the runners up the next 3 weeks straight, which I'm excited about. And plus, you guys, with you guys having such foresight, you can start thinking about what you might want to do yourself the upcoming weeks. But today is savory, and it's so easy. I was looking through this and I was like, this is going to take like 20 minutes to prep max, and then it cooks for so long we don't have to like sit and stare at each other while it cooks. Not that long. It'll be 25-35 minutes, something like that. Speaking of which, if you are baking them with me today, preheat your oven high at 425. 15 weeks later, and we're back on scones. Scones was our first session, and it has been 15 sessions. This is our 15th, and we're doing it savory. And so if you did do that scone session, or you're doing it, if you did it later, you went to the site and you did it later, you're pros at scones, and this is going to be just a little refresher course for you. Oh, thank you. Yes, someone pointed out my apron. I'm an alumni of, alumnus of USC. This is my alma mater. And I was in the band, for anyone who doesn't know that. I went to USC, and then right after I graduated is when I went to Paris with my brother and, thought about doing this pastry thing, which I continue to do. I guess that was 7 years ago. It's a long time. Feels like a long, it doesn't feel as long as this year has felt. The 6 months, so almost 6.5, I guess, that we've been doing this, quarantine and everything. Anyways, what I mean by if you're baking with me, even if you're making the dough, you don't have to bake it today. So if you're just sort of sitting there and you didn't want to eat savory scones today, make it with me. I'll tell you how to freeze it. Super simple. You're going to just freeze it, and then you can bake it off whenever you want. So this can make however many scones you want, depending on size. I'm gonna do 8 slices personally. Maybe bake 4 and save 4 for a rainy day or a sunny day, whatever. You don't need a food processor, but if you are using a food processor, get the blade attachment out, and I'll show you our recipe, and let me know if you have any questions. Very simple. If you remember this at all from our first session, basically, we're going to be putting these first 4 ingredients into a bowl, into a food processor, whatever you're using today. Then we're going to add this as our second step, and we're going to process. That is a backwards 2. You'd think after 15 weeks I'd have learned how to write backwards. That's our second step. And then after we process these together, we're going to add our mix-ins, which will be the cheese and the extra mix-ins, whatever you brought today. And then we'll bring it together with the cream and we'll bake it. It's super simple. That sounded so much to me that now that I'm repeating it out loud. But if you are not using a food processor, just use any bowl. You can massage the butter in by hand. We're all going to be looking for the same texture. You can use a pastry blender, which I don't keep one at home. It's the handle that has the metal or the wire on the end, maybe like 4 pieces of wire, and you munch it is an Amy Thielen, a chef Amy Thielen thing. I think her grandmother said that. Munch it together, the butter and the dry ingredients. Or you can use 2 knives, whatever you need to use to incorporate your butter. So you don't need a food processor. It'll go a little bit quicker for us with food processors though. But don't worry, again, this is super simple. So let's start by combining our first 4 ingredients here and process them together. Do just a little bit of a pulse or do a whisk if you're using a bowl. And if you have questions, let me know. It's 2 cups of flour. If you're using salted butter, I actually recommend you omit that salt entirely. However, I am going to top my scones with a little bit of fleur de sel sea salt because I like the way it looks. So that's an added bit of salt too. So feel free to go less on the salt if you have plans to do a little salt topping. And if you don't have baking powder, you can sub in cornstarch and baking soda. I mean, cream tartar and baking soda. Definitely look up the ratio. I don't have it in my head right now. But if you have cream tartar and baking soda on hand, if you're not, you can make these scones. I'm just pulsing back here behind you. Let me make sure no one has any questions. Oh, good. Everyone's doing well. And then your butter should be cold and cubed. If it's not cold, I wouldn't use a food processor. If you've got something a little bit softer, in this heat, I would say room temperature. Maybe don't make these yet. Throw your butter in the fridge and catch back up in a half hour. But if it's just sort of a little bit on the soft side, feel free to rub it in by hand. Seems safer to me than getting it stuck on the sides of your food processor and then you have to scrape it out. Okay, so we've got our first 4 ingredients in our food processor in our bowl, whisked together, and now you add, there we go, your butter. And I would cube it up. It doesn't really matter the size. For this, it is a 1/4 cup, which is half a stick, and I probably have 8 pieces here. Maybe 12 pieces. Maybe I did a weird cut. And what we're gonna do, and this is where if you've got a pastry blender, if you've got 2 knives, your hands, you're gonna start massaging the butter into the dough. And I'm going to pulse. I would not recommend just turning this puppy on. We're gonna be a little bit gentle. We don't want tough scones. And again, this is a 1/4 cup butter. And this is step 2. I'm really wondering about, here, I'll write this down. These 2 will be step 3, and this guy is step 4, backwards 4. I've got this. Oh, goodness. So that 2 is not instructing you on a different amount of butter. Yes, absolutely, I can repeat the steps. You're gonna combine these guys, which I'll label as a 1. You're going to combine these guys into a bowl or a food processor. Bowl of a food processor, a regular bowl, whisk them together or pulse them together. You're just looking for them to be well blended. And then we're going to add in our butter and massage it in. And I'm just pulsing my butter in. What you're looking for is a sandy texture. It's okay if you have clumps of butter. The best scones leave clumps of butter. Mine isn't coming together just yet, so I'm going to process it a little more, and I will show you. I like to squeeze it gently, and if it falls apart immediately, it's not quite ready yet. So keep on processing, just bit by bit. If your butter is too warm, you'll notice your scones leaking in the oven. You'll sort of see a pool of butter on the bottom. They'll still taste good, but they will have lost quite a bit of butter and quite a bit of moisture. Aha! Now we're talking. I do feel some larger cubes, but that's okay. Larger cubes are okay. All right, this is ready. So get a separate bowl or wherever to dump this in because we're gonna do our mix-ins next. And you want all that goodness. Get every corner of that in. And I'm gonna move my food processor out of the way. Such a simple recipe. Alrighty. I precariously plugged my food processor in behind my knife magnet board. Could have been a disaster. Okay, so now come the mix-ins, and this is really where you can do whatever you feel like. Even if you're using something, a very strong cheese. Oh, I think freezing, for anyone who's still massaging in, someone mentioned freezing the butter on hot days. I highly recommend that. You can't really go wrong if you freeze the butter. So I think that's a great suggestion. If you're using a strong cheese, you can lessen the amount a little bit. I'm using a bag of shredded cheese, so I'm literally going to just grab a cup of it and add it in here. And you want to do this before you add in your liquid. It is really hard to combine all of this together if you've already added in your liquid. So make sure you're adding in your cheese and your herbs, whatever you're using. I was just going to use thyme because I had it on hand, but I decided, we went to Blue Bottle this morning, my husband and myself, to grab coffee, New Orleans, if you know Blue Bottle, and their Gruyere white pepper waffles, and I guess they don't sell them anymore, so we went to the store and bought Gruyere and green onion, and so now I'm going to put green onion in here. I'm excited about it. And these amounts are totally up to you. I think it's safe to go anywhere from a half cup to a whole cup of mix-ins, and maybe not too much more. Let me see, I might want the whites of my green onions. I'm still deciding. I think I will. Let's go more. And you're just gonna blend it all together. Not in your food processor. We're trying to be gentler when these mix-ins come into play. Just a little bit. There's no need to be too rough. Okay. So I've got this sort of pretty orange and then green. Orange from the cheese, green from the green onions. And if you've got bacon, pancetta, if you're using any proteins, any meats, make sure they're cooked before you put them into your scones. And also that can be delicious, so don't be shy about that. All right, once this is well mixed, get a clean surface ready. I've got my marble ready. Keep your knife, because we're gonna need it later. Oh, I forgot to add in the sugar. Is anyone else, right here, guys? Hello, hold on, I'm adding it in. Here's why you need to add in the sugar, which sounds crazy in a savory scone, and it's totally okay if you're at this point with me and I didn't mention it. Now you don't have sugar in it. The sugar's not necessary really for flavor. It's only necessary if you want it to brown a little more than it would. It's the part that'll caramelize. There we go. Plus it might be a little too much with my salt addition. Because cheese is already so salty. So it's sort of nice. If you didn't add it in and don't want to, you don't have to. It's not necessary for this recipe. But I might be the only one who completely missed that step. Okay. Next, we're gonna talk cream. So I said, and you can do buttermilk cream, other dairies absolutely work, and we're going to do this by feel. And that's because with different mix-ins, it takes a different amount of liquid, and we're just looking for the dough to come together. So I'm pouring out 1 cup, and I'm going to add in maybe half of it and give the dough a mix. You can do this by hand. I like to feel it, so I think I'll do it by hand. And then I'm going to add more cream just until the dough comes together, because that's what we're looking for. The rest of the cream, whatever's left, I'm actually going to use in a cream wash on top, which is optional. Because these don't have much sugar, they don't actually brown very much. So a cream or an egg wash, or I've just learned an olive oil wash, that helps it give it a golden color. But sometimes I just make really, really blonde scones, and they taste great, even if they don't look as dark as maybe you'd expect them to look. And this is indeed a little too crumbly, so I'm gonna add in maybe a 1/4 cup more. And again, we're working with 1 cup of dairy to start. And these are going to be a little crumblier than the sweet scones we made on week 1. If anyone has any questions, let me know. Okay. And I'm going to add in just a little bit more. And I'm trying to be very gentle as I mix this together. You don't want to encourage the gluten to really get tough in here. That's typically what makes tough pastries. Oh, I'm so close. Okay, just a little bit more. Okay, and then prepare maybe a floured work surface. I've got right under my bowl right now, and we're going to turn it out onto the floured work surface. Rolling pins, 100% optional. I'm just going to pat mine out into an even layer. And I'm going to pat mine out into a circle. Okay, this is perfect. When I pour it out, you might see that I have a lot of crumbs on bottom, and I'm going to take a second to incorporate them on my marble or on your countertop or whatever. Okay. And if you come to this stage, you realize maybe you didn't add enough liquid, it's not coming together, you can add more here. You can absolutely add more. It is not the end of the world. You can add sugar to your dough after you add your mix-ins if you forgot. Not the end of the world. Again, be gentle, be a little bit gentle. So this is what I mean by patting it out. I put a little bit of flour on top, and then I just gently press it. And the reason we're looking for a circle here is because that'll create easy triangles for us. Sometimes I use cookie cutters, just round cutters to make scones. You don't need to, you can just cut this guy into 8 pieces or however many you want. So you can make this as thick as you want. It'll just affect your bake time. So there's really no wrong answer, just so long as you're checking your oven maybe a little more frequently. Okay. And if they fall apart, they can always be pressed back together. So I've just got a circle here. Let me make sure you can. Facebook's got a good view. Instagram has an okay view right now. I've just got a really pretty circle with the cheese and the green onions. It's wonderful. And so I'm going to make 8 cuts. I'm just going to cut this right in half. I'm going to make 4 cuts, beg your pardon, and then cut across the other way, and then cut each of these in half. And we've got 8 little scones, and I'll cook 4, and I'm going to save 4 for a rainy day. Get your offset that I talk about every week. They're not even that expensive. They're so worth it. And I'm going to show you what one of my triangles looks like. Just like that. So it's completely come together. It's still a little crumbly, which is good. That's what we want. And you can actually see the cheese all the way. Let me see. And see, that's a green onion cheese throughout the side. And if you are baking with me today, but you came a little late, our ovens are preheated to 425. Scones like it hot. Here we go. And a couple of these are just falling apart a little crumbly. I'm just going to take a second to press them back together. There we go. Okay, now here is sort of optional. I'm going to do a cream wash on top. I like it when they brown a little bit. Completely optional. I wouldn't even say it helps you tell when they are done. I would just say that it's an aesthetic and it's a visual preference. I'm also going to put a little bit of fleur de sel on top. You can do whatever you want at this point. Let me grab my brush. And I'm trying to make this a very, very light layer of cream. Okay. And you can do an egg wash. There's this, gosh, I recently brought this up. There's this moment in culinary school where this pretty experienced student that I was in class with, he was in my section. I don't know what it is about French chefs, but he sort of ignored exactly what the chef told us to do in the demo, and we were in the practical, meaning we're making the thing we learned in the demo. And he went and put milk in his egg wash, and I've never tried to distance myself from someone. He was like, "Oh, Sarah, would you like some of my, creamy egg wash?" When it was just supposed to be an egg wash, and I was like, "No, thank you, that's fine. No, I'm not part of this. I don't want to get yelled at." Oh my gosh, who cares? And this is salt. It's salty. So if you're doing this, keep it light. It's just a visual thing. I always like to have a little topping on my scones, and I'll come show you how much I put on. That second one might have a little too much salt. There we go. Guys, we're actually done. I can't, what in the world? This is the quickest. We should always have Savory Scones on hand. So I'm not even sure you'll be able to tell. I just have the littlest sprinkling of salt on top. Just the littlest. So, into the oven, 25 to 35 minutes. Before we go, I'm going to show you how I like to pack these for the freezer. Again, egg wash, cream wash, whatever you like on top. And make sure that if you're not doing a wash on top, you do check the bottoms. They can brown a little bit quicker. If they look like they're browning too much, just move them up in the oven. And if they look fine in the middle of the oven, leave them there. It absolutely all works. So I'm gonna set my timer for 20 minutes. I'm gonna check them, see how they're doing, flip them around. That's over halfway through. I'm predicting mine will take probably 30 to 35 minutes, just based on my oven. Okay, to freeze these, grab any pan. I thought I had one out right here. I don't. Grab anything flat. And you can actually, I would recommend parchment, but it's behind you, so I'm not gonna, I'd have to move Facebook aside. And just make sure they're flat. I wouldn't recommend on the initial freeze stacking them. And see, look, this one's coming apart a little bit. I'm just gonna very gently press it back together. But once they are frozen solid, you can take a plastic bag and put them into that plastic bag, just, you know, haphazardly, and put that back in the fridge just to save yourself some precious freezer. Put that back in the freezer, save yourself some precious freezer space that way. But on the first freeze, don't stack them because they will stick. You can, if you have a layer of parchment between, know that they'll still stick together just a little bit. And I'm gonna give this a big old plastic wrap and pop them into my freezer. On the back end of freezing, your bake time's gonna be just a little longer. So maybe add 10 minutes, maybe add just an extra 5 and check and see how they're doing halfway through. And you'll know because you'll have made them before. Hello. So I'm gonna put this into the freezer. And that's it. What? Guys, we're all gonna have scones really soon. I can't even believe this is our quickest bake-along ever. Thank you for joining. This will go live immediately on Instagram and Facebook. Super quick. And again, next week, if you weren't here in the beginning, next week will be pre-recorded just because I'm catering a wedding, but we're gonna do chocolate peanut butter cupcakes. The chocolate cake we already made in week 3, and that, so you guys are pros, but with a special edition. And then peanut butter Swiss meringue buttercream, which I'm really excited to finally show you. First bake-along, I couldn't believe how quickly you can make, right? Someone said they can't believe how quickly they can make scones. It is the simplest thing. And it's just the type of breakfast that you can keep for like a weekend morning and just throw it into the oven for 20 minutes, you know? I love scones. So it'll be pre-recorded bake-along next week, week 16. Week 17, citrus meringue pie. Finally. And we'll do, poor Madeleines, we'll do them maybe at some point in the runners-up. I mean, if you lose in the runners-up edition, I feel like, in the runners-up poll, I feel like, can you use gluten-free flour instead? Fantastic question. If you're using a 1-for-1, it should work out just fine. The texture, to me, in gluten-free flours is a little, it's a little bit tougher, so the texture will change a little bit, but your scones should bake just fine. And I love both the, I think it's Bob's Red Mill 1-for-1, and then there's Cup 4 Cup. That brand is really good. And if you look in their ingredients list, it's actually great. I think both are a rice flour blend. So absolutely. Oh my gosh, of course, my pleasure. Thank you guys so much for jumping on. If you do want to see past bake-alongs, make sweet scones, all on the site, beurrepastryshop.com/blog. All 14 previous weeks are up there, ready for you to make them. I'm glad that it's nice that we had sort of like a relaxing, easy week and we still get scones afterwards. I love that. In the meantime, make sure you let me know how yours goes. Send me your photos. Use the hashtag BeurreBakeAlong so I can find you, because I love featuring everyone's creations. It's one of my favorite parts of seeing how things turned out. I think it was, I might have told you this. 2 weeks ago, I released Chocolate Souffle pre-recorded because it was Father's Day, and someone that week, I think, made it and sent me just the best rise I've ever seen. So let me know. I loved, you know, continuing to bake with you. This is really fun. So thank you so much. Oh, someone has a great tip. They say make sure to sift your gluten-free flour because they found it makes a big difference. What a fantastic tip. Thank you. I'm going to use that tip. My goodness, would you recommend the cup for cup as someone who has more experience than me baking with gluten-free flour? Let me know. I'm very curious, and I can tell everyone else too. I can absolutely repeat the baking times. I'm so glad you asked. These will take 25 to 35 minutes. Maybe check them. I put it for 20. Now I'm thinking I'll set another timer for 10 because that was too confusing. Maybe I'm thinking I should maybe check 5 minutes sooner is what I'm saying. Really your only risk is the bottom. So just make sure you check the bottom. If it's browning too quickly, move it up. Don't lower your oven temperature or anything. Scones do like a higher temperature. And if anyone else has any questions, always send me a direct message or an email. I always try and get back when I find it. Sometimes I miss that they exist. I'm so sorry about that. But this was very fun. Thank you and happy Sunday. You don't have to flip them upside down, but I always recommend turning your tray around 180 degrees just to promote even baking time. Avoid those hot spots in the oven, just one scone sitting in that hot spot for too long. And someone does prefer Bob's Red Mill, but have used other, got it, okay, a preference for Bob's Red Mill, sorry. It's like my contacts blurred for a second. So Bob's Red Mill as a preference from someone who knows gluten-free flour. That's a good tip for me too. I learned so much from you guys. Anyways, thanks for sticking on while we chat at the end too. I will see you next week in a pre-recorded video, chocolate peanut butter cupcakes, and then live the following week for citrus meringue pies with probably both with Swiss meringue. We'll see. Maybe Italian meringue. We're going meringue crazy the next 2 weeks. I'll see you guys next time. Let me know how everything goes. And in the meantime, keep baking. Keep baking and send me your results. I can't wait to hear. Bye.